This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have one of my favorite individuals in the fantasy sports industry. From Fantasy Pros, it's Derek Brown. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
What's going on, dude? It's been a minute since we've seen each other, expo and conventions and such, but glad to chop it up, man. Glad to be here.
Excited to have you on. Yeah, that's right. We first met back in probably 2018 National Fantasy Football Convention.
That was
Fort Worth, Texas. I mean, that was it's funny because it feels like that was yesterday, but it feels like it was also like forever ago. But yeah, good times for sure. It's just been so cool to see your rise up in the industry. So well deserved. I guess we'll start. Just talk to me about your experience right now, like at Fantasy Pros. What is that like for you?
I love it, man. I think that there are rare spots in life where you get to do your job and two things. One, work with friends, and I truly mean that. There's so many people at Fantasy Pros that I've respected from afar, or worked with in the past and stuff. So ending up there just felt like such a hand in glove fit. Geez, dude, Joe Pisapia gave me my first publication, writing gig, writing for the Black Book. I did podcasts with Fitz whenever he had Fitz on Fantasy, years ago. I contributed to group articles for Fantasy Pros when I had 50 followers, whatever, and I'm talking to Blaine, my one of my bosses in emails and stuff. So it's honestly just a blessing, man. I love working there. I love my coworkers, and unfortunately in our space, that can't be said for all creators, all writers. We see too many times where it's brands taking advantage of writers, taking advantage of creators, not paying people and stuff. And that's something that would never happen at Fantasy Pros. And I just feel blessed to work with a great company.
Well, it's a great fit. You said, it's a great people, but it's great to see you there. I love it. Let's rewind back to where it all began, like your journey. You grew up in Louisiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then transplanted to Texas. Where did your love for sports begin? Where did it all start?
So growing up, I was mostly, I never played football, organized. Well, I played some organized football in junior high and stuff and realized I was too small and too slow and I was going to get the absolute shit kicked out of me. And I was like, okay, well, we're not doing that. So I stopped. I didn't play high school football and things like that, but baseball was always my first love growing up. So I think that's where some of the love of numbers and stats and all that kind of stuff came up. I used to when I was growing up, I was a pitcher by trade. I was okay at hitting. I was okay at playing the field and stuff like that. Played everywhere. But pitching was my big thing. And every year growing up, I would keep notebooks of I would have a start or something like that. I'd come home, I'd write down all my stuff. I calculate my own ERAs and crap. So growing up, I was always a baseball fan. Baseball. And football kind of came into the periphery the older I got. I was never an LSU fan or college football fan, but I became a diehard Saints fan. I remember going to my first Saints game, and it was one of Joe Montana's final seasons when he was a Chief, not 49ers or anything like that, but he was a Chief. And I remember going there and rooting for the Saints and stuff, but being in awe of Montana, carving them up. I think he threw for 350 and 3 touchdowns. He absolutely just decimated. This was the time they were the Aints, not the Saints.
Yeah.
And so it was just a good time, man. That kind of springboarded me into more of a love of football. I became I was a diehard San Francisco Giants fan. No reason why, no ties. I was just my favorite player, kind of pre-steroids, was Barry Bonds growing up. And so I guess I naturally gravitated to the other really freaking good team in that area. So I was honestly a diehard. I loved the Saints, but I loved the 49ers. 94, 95, Steve Young was probably my favorite player if it wasn't Drew Brees after the fact. So really that's where it kind of got all started, man. And I wasn't a football fan to begin with.
I can relate to that too with baseball and also playing sports and keeping my own stats. I think it was like for me, baseball card collecting and being obsessed with the numbers and the stats.
Mhm.
So I can definitely relate to that. But it's cool that you found teams across the country to root for. So did your love for the Niners continue, or is it just that
Mhm.
era that you kind of appreciated?
No, I mean, I love the Niners, like, through, like, the Jeff Garcia era and things like that. Like, I still will root for them now. Like, it's just a team that I always used to joke, and I still would joke with my wife. I'm like, if you ever want to move, we can easily move to San Francisco. Totally fine with that. Like, I would be happy as a clan, like rooting for the Giants and the Niners. Totally fine with that. So, it kind of started there, and it's dwindled a little bit. Like, obviously, if I have to claim fandom for any one team, it's going to be the Saints. Like, picking out my favorite player of all time, it's easily Drew Brees. Just everything he did for that area to change not only that area and to help it come back from, and of course, I lived in Louisiana. So all of the stuff with the hurricanes, Katrina, all that stuff hits very, very close to my heart, close to home. Like, I know I have relatives and stuff, people that I know that were displaced and really went through all that. I was in nursing school at the time. So dealing with that on the other side was it was an adventure.
Yeah. No, I can see where, your appreciation for Drew, exceeds the football field. He's a great human being. So that's cool. Now, what are your thoughts on like the Texas teams? Like, are you like very much anti the Texas teams, or have you embraced any of those squads in any sport?
Not really. I mean, I'll say we've embraced the Texas Rangers living here. We've gone to a lot of games, like brought the kids to a lot of games. But as far as like, will you see any Dallas Cowboys memorabilia floating around my house? No. The only way that'll happen is I've started a signed jersey wall of like, whether it's players, really, it's honestly been players that have like helped me in various spots, like win a lot of money at DFS. Like last year, I had a banner year, and because of that, I won a crap ton of money one week, and so I ended up buying a signed Jalen Hurts jersey and a signed Christian Watson jersey. I mean, when guys help punch your ticket to a DraftKings live final, it feels like you probably should get something to remember that. So
I love that. I love the idea of commemorating a fantasy season with with an autographed jersey of a player
mhm.
that got you there. So that's cool. I love it. So as a sports fan, what was your biggest loss that you've ever experienced?
Oh man, it has to easily be the Minnesota Miracle. I remember watching that game and watching Stephon Diggs take it to the house and feeling sick to my stomach,
Oh,
like screaming to my toes, and just being in disbelief of what I just witnessed. Like
yeah.
looking at there are two that are equal, I think, and that's like different opposite ends of the spectrum. As a Saints fan, it's the Minnesota Miracle and Stephon Diggs crushing our souls, and the onside kick and the Saints winning the Super Bowl. So like the two opposite ends of the spectrum that encompass my fandom really are the ones that stand out as like those take home memories.
Yeah, so it's the your best memory in sports is the onside kick and the Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
was great, man. I still remember at the time we were renting like this little farmhouse outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we had family over. And my son, I think, was, oh god, my oldest was maybe about a year or two old. Yeah, about a year. And I was actually holding him like he was sleeping on me, like while the game is going on. And the onside kick happens, and they get into victory formation, they win the ball game and stuff. And I'm hollering so goddamn loud that I woke up my son, and I felt so freaking terrible, but I was like cheering to the top of my lungs. And that, you gotta lose yourself in that moment. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, dang it. Sorry, man. Well, you came along for the ride. I guess you're going to celebrate too.
You're part of the history of this
Yeah.
experience now. I love it. So when did you discover fantasy football and fantasy
From
sports?
it was probably I forget the year, but I could tell you what players went off that season because I made a lot of like good draft picks, dumb trades. I mean, that's one of the things that's the honest truth about fantasy is you learn by playing as well. So you learn what not to do by doing what not to do sometimes. And that goes across not only redraft but dynasty and stuff. Like there's only one way to learn how to play dynasties by playing dynasties. So when the first year that I played fantasy, one of my high school buddies, college friends, now my brother-in-law, got me into playing in a league with a bunch of our high school friends. And that year I drafted Jamal Charles, I drafted Jimmy Graham. Those are the years that like they went off. But I also drafted Doug Martin, and this was his rookie season, and he went just total nuts.
Yeah.
But I bring that up because I remember that being the first year, and I'll never forget one of the worst trades I ever made. I think I traded Doug Martin for Justin Hunter because I was like, oh, he's going to go off. He's like the only standing wide receiver. And I think it was for the Titans at the time. I could be wrong on that, but I traded for Justin Hunter and I was like, oh, this is a great trade. I'm coming out. And then Doug Martin goes bonkers down the stretch. And I got text messages from my buddy every single day, like, thanks for the trade, man. Appreciate the trade. Doug Martin's playing really good football. And I'm like, so I remember that season very, very well. Couldn't tell you the year, but I remember what happened to make it a memorable one.
Nice. Now you need a Doug Martin jersey just to like to remember like
encapsulate
the
the pain.
foundation.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that humbling moment. Like, oh yeah, Doug Martin. Okay. Reel it back in. Oh, that's funny. So do you remember whose content you consumed at the beginning of you getting into fantasy?
It was a lot of guys with NFL fantasy. So I used to read a lot of their work. I'd watch all the shows. My wife and I would sit down and watch them. And so big shout out to Marcus Grant, true baller, still one of the top guys in the game. And the other two guys that I used to read a lot of their stuff. I mean, Brad Evans, who I've worked with as a colleague and stuff. Shout out to him. He's awesome dude. Read a lot of his stuff, watched a lot of his stuff. But to be honest, and this is not just because of where I am, but I mean, there are so many things with my content, how I shape it now and where my career has gone, much less like even back then, man. Like I consumed content from Mike Tagliere all the way back from before he was at Fantasy Pros, when he was doing his own thing with just him and Tabby. And I remember hopping on their website at the time into like live Q&As and asking them questions and just being elated when both of them answered or even like pick the question that I asked. So shout out to Tags, man. I consumed his content way before he even got to the levels that he reached, like with Fantasy Pros and PFF and things like that. Like I still remember reading his stuff whenever he was doing his own thing on the side.
That's incredible. It's truly remarkable to think about where you're at now and what you're doing. And I mean, he touched so many lives. It's testament to his work ethic and his kindness to everyone is
oh man,
it's
I don't know. Do you want a side tangent story off of that?
Sure, yeah.
Because I mean, I kind of alluded to the fact of like he helped shape who I was as a content creator, even when I first got into content, man. And I read all of his stuff because it was so personable and so like when you read Tags' stuff, you actually felt like he was almost like it was weird. Like I've never read a lot of people's stuff to where it felt like I was almost like reading like an audiobook. Like I could hear it, I could understand the inflection and how he was delivering it. And one of the things that I'll never be able to tell him thank you for enough. When I first started with content, and he was already at Fantasy Pros and I was just starting out things, and I hit him up. But he was one of the few people that had their DMs open and stuff. So I sent him like a cold DM out the blue and sent him an article, maybe like the third or fourth article that I had ever written, and sent him in a DM. And I was like, look, I understand if you never get back to me, you never respond to this. And I get that. Totally get it. And won't think any less or whatever. And I asked him for feedback. I asked him for like real honest feedback about an article series that I was starting, and took a few days. And I opened my DMs one day to like, he had written me like an essay of like pointers, things he would have done differently, different ways to approach, different stats, different all these types of things. And you don't get that from a lot of people. Hell, maybe anybody, like you just don't get that. Like, and anybody that's a content creator, and if you've ever reached out, I mean, Kev, you could tell me the same thing, man. Like, how many times have you sent something to somebody whenever you first started this show and you ask them, you say, look, really tell me, what do you think about this? And they give you the butt pat and they're like, oh, it's good. It's no, it's good. It's good. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what could I do better on it? Well, I mean, it's really good. It's pretty good, like the way it is. Like, and that's what you'll get from 95% of people, where it's like, did you even read it? Did you watch this? Did you care? And to me, I was floored that he took the time to do that and really took the time to like give me an honest answer and give me feedback, because feedback and constructive feedback is something that people will ask for a lot. And a lot of times you won't get it back, but a lot of times people aren't ready to hear those types of realities about, the time that they're putting into something, and that, okay, it could be better, so how that's received, not only getting that type of feedback is rare, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not comfortable giving negative feedback to anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, there's countless stories of the way he treated people that he had never met or known,
Yep.
through the DMs and stuff. I had interactions with him. It was like, yeah, truly. I mean, not like that, but similar in that like this guy, like, well, I don't even know why we're having a conversation, but this is wonderful, right? And he's that kind of person. So
Mhm.
shout out to Tags for sure. When it comes to this great game, this game that we love, what is it that you love the most about playing fantasy football?
I love the weekly puzzle. I love trying to make all the puzzle pieces fit. It's probably one of the things that, like, why I love doing content as much as I do. It's like trying to put a puzzle together in the dark with the tiniest flashlight imaginable, and then hoping that it comes out the way that it's supposed to come out. And a lot of what we do is forecasting on week to week based off of numbers, based off of a lot of different things. And whether we get it right or we get it wrong, there's so much variance and so much variability, not even bringing injuries and stuff like that. But I love it, man. That's why I love DFS as much as I do. That's why I love the betting angles. Like, I love all of it. I just love the complexity and going through all of the numbers to try to sit here and unearth like some kind of random gem that could lead you down a whole another different rabbit hole.
That's good. That's good. Now, do you have favorite league settings for just normal fantasy leagues?
I'd say for redraft, definitely. And like the conversation starts with no kickers and no defense. Like, no, like I just no. You cannot interest me in playing two different plugging in two weekly options of saying, well, this person could give me, or this defense could give me anywhere between 3 and 33 points. I don't
Yeah.
know. There's a certain amount of like shirt tail analysis I could give you, but past that, and let's just roll the dice. Like, nah, man, like I'm not about that. So for redraft, it's no defense, no kickers. For dynasty formats, the conversation starts at we're playing super flex, like have to. So I think that from the base levels, that's probably my favorite settings and formats for at least those two parts.
Yeah, no, I like that. Do you have a home league that you consider like your primary league at this stage?
um,
I'm sure you're in a ton of leagues, right? Industry leagues and everything.
yeah. I mean, I've got two leagues that I still run. One with family members, and the other with friends from like college, high school, all that kind of stuff. Like, one of them we've had going for the last 10 years, and the other one's somewhere around like 12 or 13 years. But both of them are awesome. Like, we used to have like, the full like live drafts and stuff like when we lived in Louisiana. And now, like, since moving to Texas, we'll when we have the time and everybody can kind of make it work with like life and stuff, we'll have like a pseudo live draft, like do the whole Zoom party thing and stuff, and like, we're doing drinking games and stuff like in between
nice.
picks and stuff. It's good stuff. So you make it work.
I love it. That's the key, right? Not everybody can do a home live draft, but if you can't, you gotta be creative to make it fun. Because those are the elements that that make fantasy leagues the most fun to me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have who's your biggest rivalry in fantasy? Whether it's a home league or an industry league, someone like you just when you beat them, it's the most. It makes you the most happy, or someone who you lose to and it just crushes you the most.
So for most of the leagues, it used to be me and my brother-in-law, and we would text back and forth as matchups are going. Or like I remember beating him 2 or 3 years in a row. Like I sweeped him like 2-0, and I'm talking like one of the years was like by the skin of my teeth. Like I think like my 2 combined wins were like by like 1.2 points. Like
That's awesome.
it was so good, and it was one of those moments where you just like. You're like, okay, I know in the back of my head there's a lot of luck or some variability with this. But to him, I was like, I just absolutely beat you. Like just rubbing it in, whereas like the reality of it is you're like, man, I was so lucky to get those wins.
Yeah.
But you're never going to say that to him,
Yeah.
Nothing but trash talk, relentless trash talk.
You're like, thank God my kicker got 15.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh man, you needed that sack at the last 5 minutes of the game of garbage time. Woo!
I love it. I love it. Now professionally, in a previous life, you worked as a pediatric oncology nurse.
Yeah.
What led to that career path, and what was that experience like for you? And did you ever anticipate leaving that career for what you got going now?
No. I mean, the answer is emphatically no. Yeah, I worked for St. Jude's in Baton Rouge, the affiliate, for 10 or 12 years, somewhere on there. Getting older now and I forget times. But I worked there for a long time. And honestly, like Kev, like that was the first job I got out of nursing school. And I fell in love with it. I love that job. Like every part of me loved that job. Love that job with my soul. And honestly, I thought I was going to retire doing that. But as life would, things change and stuff and jobs change. And at one point I thought I wanted to go into nursing management, and I'd gotten that job and I'd worked pediatric oncology for 12 odd years. And I loved everything about being a nurse. Loved the connection that you form with patients, the connection that you form with families, the type of just the difference that you can make in somebody's life, and I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And it's unfortunate with medicine nowadays. I mean, like, come on, man, like, medicine nowadays is not the medicine. And I don't want to go off on a side tangent, but we brought it up. So like medicine nowadays is not what medicine was 13 years ago, 15 years ago. The connection and the time that you get with patients and stuff is just not the same.
Yeah.
You're running from one way to another. Like hospitals are now more of like catered to treat it like they're at a hotel. It's like, no, it's not a hotel. You're at a hospital. You're sick and people are trying to help you get better, and just the entire shift with all of that. I mean, dude, I switched because I got to a point in my career where I was doing management in nursing and things like that. And I was just like, I was burnt out. Like, I was just like, I'm just not happy. Like I wasn't doing oncology anymore. I gotten to a point where I was just like, you're doing different things. And it's easy sometimes in life to feel like you've kind of lost your way, and I was like, I'm not happy doing this anymore. I'm not happy with my work. Like, I mean, I was like sneaking off from doing work and not like neglecting patients, but when I was in other roles, like I was using my lunch break instead of eating lunch. I was doing freaking podcasts on my lunch break. Like I'd have people call me. I was doing guest spots on Sirius Radio on my lunch break and stuff. And like the more and more I thought about it, I was like, man, this is like something that I love with every fiber of my being. Like I love every part of it. I love it the way that I loved medicine when I got into medicine. And I was like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to make this a career, but damn it, I'm going to try. Like, I'm just going to keep pushing this side hustle as far as I can to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like the 1%, 2% of people at that time, because now, I'm not saying it's easier to get a full-time job, but there are more startups, there's more opportunities, there's more places for people to work now, that having a full-time job in the industry, whereas 10 to 15 years ago, you could name those people on two hands. And nowadays you need all your fingers and toes and then some, and that's a great thing. That's a great thing for this industry. But back then it seemed more like a pipe dream of like, I'm never going to get to that point, but I'm going to keep trying, at worst, what am I going to do? Like, I'm doing something I love as a hobby. I'm doing it on the side. And yes, like, is that a lot of hours? So anybody out there that's doing the double duty of content creating, of like, you're working the full-time job, you have the family, and you're doing all this shit on the side, and like maybe that's 70 or 80 hours, just keep freaking pushing, man, because you don't know where that's going to lead you. You don't, and that's a personal decision for everybody, like priorities and family and this and that and stuff. But for me, I would say keep pushing it, because you never know what path that's going to lead you down and where it's going to end up. Like, I'm still surprised, like, that I'm even having this conversation with you today, man.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make opportunities happen, right? And obviously, it sounds like I've seen it with you, just the way you've created a path for yourself. Obviously, it hasn't been easy the whole path,
No,
but
not easy.
When did you start creating content, and where did that begin?
My first article, there's an Instagram post out there somewhere. I had bounce back players, and I think this was 2015 was my first article that I ever wrote. 2015 or 2016. I remember the players that were in it. I remember Carson Palmer being in there. I remember Julius Thomas being in there, to date myself. And I was then writing for a small site called Fantasy Football 24/7. Shout out to my dude, Willie. Love that dude like a brother. Still text him nowadays. Like, love that guy. And that's another, thing where it talks about, like, you make lifelong friendships in this industry. And sometimes these people you never met in your life, and maybe you never will meet them, it doesn't stop them from being your friends. And, I went from reaching out to him to write for his site at that time, which he sold draft kits and also ran a content site. And I remember reaching out to him to write stuff, and one thing led to another. And he's like, "Hey man, like, would you ever consider doing a podcast?" And I was like, "I don't know, maybe. I've never talked about football like on the air. I've never tried anything like that." So then jumping into that arena, and then eventually, like, me and Willie, like, we were partners. We ran the site. We divided everything. Like, whenever, I think the first time we met, Kev, it was me and Willie being at National Fantasy Convention in Dallas or Fort Worth that year. I forget where it was held.
Fort Worth. It was supposed to be Dallas, but it got
yeah, then it got moved.
Fort
It got
Worth.
moved. Yeah, it was at the convention center in Fort Worth. And me and him walking around doing the due diligence with backpacks, handing out flyers and shit for our website and stuff, and just hoofing it and working hard, man. It was a good time, man. But that's where I started. And then I kind of went, whenever Willie decided, like, he was like, I want to pull back. I want to, because we both, like, we took 24/7, like, we were affiliated. We did the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast before, like, Locked On became like what it is today. We were doing that for, I think, 1 or 2 seasons. Shout out to my dude Ethan Turner, still grinding in the fantasy industry. Love that man. Truly awesome at injury stuff. And went from that to, I became somewhat of like a nomad, or buddies used to like give me shit about it and say, like, I was more like a gun for hire. That, because I would bounce around from site to site, and a lot of it was just like, at that point, it was, okay, how can I get my work in front of more eyes? How can I get my work in front of this platform or that platform, and just kind of keep stepping up the ladder is what the aim was. So, I mean, I wrote stuff for Fantasy Pros. I wrote for Number Fire. I did stuff with like DraftKings with like their DK Sweat show. I did stuff on Sirius doing guest spots. Like, I did guest spots on Sirius way back when Fantasy Insiders was a thing. And I think Ben Gretsch was over there, Jeff Johnson, and I did a weekly guest spot that honestly, like I just networked because I DM'd somebody at the blue. And I was like, do you need anybody for a guest spot? I've heard y'all's DFS stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, just keep me in mind if you ever need anybody. And that parlayed into like a weekly guest spot on their show every Friday night at like midnight. So I would stay up all Friday night, and I would do that show like religiously. Like I remember one week I didn't have a voice, couldn't hardly talk. I'm like sucking down like gargling tea and salt water and shit. So like I had somewhat of a voice to do a show at midnight on radio that I was not getting paid for, but just to try to help myself.
That's dedication, man. That's dedication. And yeah, I love bringing up the NFFC because I still picture Andrew Erickson and Nate Hamilton. Like it's so funny that
Oh, it's good
when I
stuff,
look at the
man.
people that are there, and then you got industry people there getting to meet for me, like you meeting Brad and
Yep.
Brandon Funston for the first time, and Liz
Yep.
Loza. Like it's just so cool to think back to those times, and again think of like young Andrew Erickson and right, like it's good times. So it's been a heck of a journey. Obviously, it's been challenging. Talk to me about some of the challenges you've faced along the way. I know that there's been times where you've questioned whether to continue, and obviously you've made it work. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I will say I've had 2 or 3 different points in my career doing all this, and one of them is extremely very fresh in my mind. Like it's not like anything recent or whatever, but like I remember being at a time where I was at probably the lowest of low, like the lowest I'd ever been in my life. I had left the nursing job. I'd just trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do with life, man, and making that type of transition from nursing to fantasy. Like I had left the nursing job, and at this point I had probably been out of work for about 6 months trying to get nursing jobs, I'd applied for 2 industry jobs. And, to their point, they went other directions, like 2, 3 rounds of interviews, 4 rounds of interviews. And places like, oh, we'll fly you up for a TV spot to sit here and see how you are on camera and stuff. And then like getting an email, 3 or 4 days later, oh, we've decided to sit here and go in a different direction, and being crushed. Like, so I think it was a culmination of like a few different things. Like one, being out of work, trying to like hell to sit here and do anything I could just to provide for my family. I was doing, pay per articles for as many sites as I could just to sit here and try to pay bills and do everything that I could while I was trying to grind, because I was like, okay, well, this is also an opportunity for me to do this job as a job. And in the sense of, if I can do this as a job, and in a way that if I were full time, how would I approach this job? And not only prove that to maybe a prospective company, but to prove it to myself that I could do that. And probably about 6 to 8 months into all of that, I was about as low as you can get. I've been passed over for about 3 or 4 different jobs. We were struggling to pay bills. I was all in my head. Like I was contemplating, like, what do I do? Do I go back to nursing? I hate that I hate the medical field with everything. Like I was so burnt out. Like I was just like, this is not what I got into it for. And I was like, but I don't see a way forward in fantasy and stuff. And I remember having a conversation with Joe Pisapia. I think it was on a Monday or Tuesday. And I called him. I reached out to him. I don't forget how we even started talking. And I was like, man, I'm about to just say, screw it. I'm about to just delete everything and just disappear off into the ether and try to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life. And I called him out of the blue. He texted me and he's like, look, here's my number. Call me. We spent probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours on the phone and talking life, talking everything. And he's like, look, just don't give up. Okay. Like you just keep pushing forward. You can do this. And I still tell him thank you about that today. And it's one of those things where you truly appreciate the hard times that get you, and when you get past something like that, so like
Yeah.
between Joe, between family, between my wife kicking me in the ass, like whenever I felt like I couldn't continue to do whatever it was, whether it was going to work for the family or or getting paid hardly anything and staying up till 3 a.m. to finish preseason football content because I was like, I'm gonna prove I can do this shit.
Yeah.
Between Joe and between my wife, like pushing me forward, yeah, I wouldn't be here doing this, man. I'm sitting here getting teared up and shit, just thinking about all that. But it's real.
No, it's an inspirational story for sure. And Joey P, I mean, he's that kind of
I
person,
love that.
right?
Love that man.
Yeah,
Love that
yeah.
man.
No, it's a cool story, and it's authentic, and it's real. Like, you gotta the grind is real. And it's another testament to like where you're at now, and how cool it is to see that, from the
Well,
outside. So happy for you, proud of you for staying in it, because this industry wouldn't be the same without you in it. So
oh man.
let's talk about the community. Like, how much is the
Mhm.
fantasy football community meant to you, and specifically the expo? Like, what has the expo experience been like for you?
It's wild, man. It's wild. I love the community to death. Now social media, I make my rounds about social media, and you could say one of those two things are kind of intertwined as far as like the fantasy football community and social media and things like that. But the reality of the fantasy football community, and I think social media nowadays, if there are a lot of negative things, and there's a lot of, I think, between it being negative or groupthink or things like that, you can go down some pretty destructive rabbit holes if you want to about people's feedback on your content, the things that you put out there and stuff like that. But also the flip side is absolutely true. I think that no news travels like bad news. So people that are detractors, they don't like you, they don't like your content. It's always kicked up to 11. But if you're really mindful about, you're trying to help people, and really, like, I don't want to sound like I'm just like being, just blowing smoke up people's asses. But like for me, it's like I really do put everything I have into trying to help people. And that's why I got into medicine. That's why I still love doing this. All of the messages after the season of, hey, like I just won my league. I haven't won in 5 years, or I've won 5 out of 6 leagues, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
or, branch it out to betting and DFS. Like I had a previous place I was at, I had a sub reach out to me and be like, look, like, because of this money I just won in preseason DFS, I'm able to put a down payment on our house, and I never thought that that was going to be possible. So thank you. And I was like, I don't even know how to process that, man.
Yeah.
So like, I love this community. I love all the support. I love the fact that there, it's not only can you take away the good things to keep you pushing forward and to validate that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, but you can also take away all the stuff that like can kick you in the ass and make you better. It's like, um, if you're not continuing to try to push the envelope and still learn and grow, which I'm still doing that now, like I feel like once you get to a point and you have reached a point where you don't think you can learn anymore, you don't think you can do better, you don't think that, there's anything more for you to gain or to continue to improve, you probably need to look in the mirror and have a real conversation with yourself, because that's probably not the reality. So
Yeah.
for me, it's the community continues to not only help me to continue to push forward whenever I'm tired and it's week 12 and I've like pulled like 3 all-nighters, like for the last 3 Wednesdays to get the primer out on time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so spent. Or, at the same time, or when I'm riding high and somebody's like, hey, like, what's up with this guy and this guy and this guy? And you said this and you said this. And then I go back to the process and I'm like, man, you know what? Looking at this now, I think I should have approached it from this angle instead of writing it this way and stuff. So it's a lot of things, man. It's a lot of things. It's both the good and the bad, but you take all that in and you compartmentalize it and try to make yourself better moving forward with it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. In the expo, you're meeting people, your colleagues in the industry. Like,
Oh
how's
yeah,
how's that been for you?
I went rambling. I didn't even mention the expo.
No,
The
that's
expo is
okay.
wild, dude.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a like summer camp, you know, like when you go like to summer camp and you get to see all your friends and buddies and like y'all are sitting there just shooting the shit till like 3 o'clock in the morning, telling ghost stories. Like it's so much fun, man. Like last year was my first year to go to the expo. We're going to be back. We're going to be back and we're going to have more people from Fantasy Pros coming this year. Like Erickson's going to be there. I think Joey P's coming. Thor's going to be there. Me, Pat, like Worm, our social media manager, like everybody. I think Chris Welsh, who's now full-time with Fantasy Pros. Shout out to him. Freaking love that dude. But we're going to have a ton of people from Fantasy Pros at Expo this year. And it's freaking awesome, man. But to me, it's also, and I'll be real about this. We talked about this before you turned the cameras on, but it's freaking weird, dude. It's so weird. Like when people walk up to me and shake my hand, they say like, and I'm not trying to make this sound like whatever, like, you know, like boasting anything, but like when people walk up to me and shake my hand and say like, you know, like, hey, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm just like, why? Like there's nothing special about me or whatever. Like I don't know how to process or deal with that. So like, it's a wonderful thing to get to meet everybody in the community and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like when I am meeting people, like, do I also feel like I told Thor this while we were there. I was like, I equate it to the same feeling as when there's a birthday party and you're the birthday person and you sit there and you open presents in front of everybody. And it's like this, like happy, excited, but awkward as shit kind of feeling where I'm like, like, I don't know what do I do with my face? Like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know. It's like, like, so it's wonderful. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how to deal with it too, you know?
I love it. That's a good analogy too. But no, I would say that in your case, you know, I mentioned this before, but authenticity, you know, people relate. People relate to people that they feel are authentic and real. And that's something that you put forth so well. And so I think that you
For
know,
better or worse, I don't know how to be anything else, Cat. Like it's either
it's
like
you, man.
you like me or you hate me, but I'm gonna be me because
There you
I don't know
go.
what else to do, man.
Take it or leave it. Here we go. No, I love it. Let's dive into a few just rapid fire questions. I'll throw out a question. You just give me an answer that comes to mind. And we'll start with what do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
Helping people. Absolutely, it's all helping people. That continues to fulfill me, like back then and now.
I love it. What are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
I've always been a gym rat. Now you know, the grind of the season and stuff like that kind of pushes that to the wayside, but love attacking the gym. And I also two other things like big time, like relaxing or like as far as like leisure activities for me. I am an avid fisherman. Put me on a boat, stick me in the middle of the ocean. I'll be happy as a clam all freaking day. That is my zen spot. That music, man. Like I listen to music constantly. I mean, listen to music when I'm watching film, writing the primer. I always have, and it's one of those things like people get, and I'm gonna out myself here real fast, but people equate like literature and reading and stuff like that as like taking them away or taking them to another place or, you know, experiencing a book. Like, so all of these books behind me, nah, I hadn't read any of that shit. Like that's all my wife. So anybody that looks at this backdrop, I'm a total fraud. I'm not an avid reader because whatever is supposed to be built into your head to where you visualize things as you read it, I wasn't born with those microchips. So I don't have that. So music has always been my poetry. What I take away, like I own so much music and download and listen to so much music, it's ridiculous. So music has kind of always been like my muse, how other people equate it to like how, you know, how they attack literature.
Do you have an all-time favorite band?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a metalhead, through and through. So anybody out there, if you're an old school emo guy like me or a metalhead, shout out to you, props. But Killswitch Engage is probably my favorite band. I have, quotes of their songs actually tattooed on me. My wife and I have a split quote, from one of their side projects and stuff. So that if I had to pick one band, that would be it.
What are you listening to right now?
What am I spinning right now? I'm listening to a lot of Woe Is Me. I've listened. Oh my god, dude. I'm down a rabbit hole right now. There's a new band called What Boy or Boy What? I forgot it was. It is AI. So all the music this person writes. So it's all like uh they craft the metal music and stuff to put this over, but the singing in the song, it's AI generated SpongeBob characters. So like, and I call it Plankton Core is basically what it is, because Plankton is the lead singer, and he's singing about, but they also have like cameos of like SpongeBob will have like lines, and it's legit good, dude. It's like a guilty pleasure right now. Like the dude's got like 3 songs out, and I'm so like, I've got them on repeat. I'm writing and shit, and I'm like,
Uh,
I don't know why this is so good. Should not be as good as it is, but I keep listening to it. My kids like know the lyrics, and my wife is like, "Oh shit, we listen to SpongeBob metal again." I'm like, "Yeah, we are, baby."
oh, that's fun. I'll have to get that
It's
information.
so good, dude. It's a guilty pleasure.
Do you have an all-time favorite show?
Oh man, easily. We named both of our dogs after this show. We actually named my son and one of my daughters after this show, but Scrubs is easily. Yes, I do have a son named his initials are JD. I do have a daughter named Elliot. We
Amazing.
do have dogs. Rest in peace, one of them. But Turk was one of our dogs, and JD is still kicking around. He's our old man, but Scrubs
good.
is through and through.
Yeah.
I think one of the best television shows ever made. And people,
Yeah.
come fight me. You got a problem with that? Come fight me, people, because I love that show. I feel like the ending episode of that show was one of the best, most well done TV episodes ever. Love it.
It's not easy to end shows, so
No.
that's a great point. And then
And that show, like, you watch the ending of that show, and you're like happy and you're laughing, but you're like,
yeah,
ah!
so good, so
Oh,
good.
it's so good, man.
I love that those two guys are doing commercials that like brings
Yeah.
it all back together.
Yep.
So that's good. That's good. Now, how about all-time favorite movie?
Ooh, I'd say it's probably down to like 2. So I'm a big like character actor type of person. Like I've got all of my little bobbleheads right here above me. I've got George R. Martin. I've got various ideas of Deadpool. But for me, it comes down to character acting. So I'm gonna pick between 2, because I've also got their bobblehead. So Heath Ledger's Joker, and then Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday. So Tombstone and Dark Knight are probably fighting for my favorite movie. Like Dark Knight's on.
Yeah.
I'm stopping whenever I'm doing. Same thing with Tombstone. I'm stopping because the character acting and the delivery and how just that those characters just draw you in.
Yeah. Great movies. Dark Knight's phenomenal. But yeah, Tombstone, like the quotes, like
so many quotables.
You can you can just repeat the whole movie when you're watching it.
That part where he's taking the little thimble and the cup and he's like doing the backflipping. Oh my god, dude, it's
so good, so good. You're right.
So
when you're scrolling along and that's on, you just have to turn it on. You're right. How about an all-time favorite sports movie?
I'm between 2. And one of them it's 2 baseball movies. So it's either Major League, because it's a freaking classic. Like it's absolutely fantastic. Or let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. I love Major League. Or For Love of the Game. And if anybody has not seen that, Kevin Costner, he's throwing a no-hitter and it kind of goes through his entire life. And only because like I remember when I was growing up, it's funny because I think of like growing up playing baseball when I watched that movie, but also like I did, and this is real. I did when I was about 15 or 16 throw a no-hitter, and so every time that I watch that movie, I think of I kind of replay that entire game in my mind and stuff. So
oh, that is awesome. That's a cool memory. And especially if you got a trigger like that, I'd be watching that movie every day.
I love that movie. Love it.
That's good. All right. Now, what's your Super Bowl prediction for this year?
Oh, 49. I'll go chalk. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy. Like, I think it's 49ers and Ravens. I think it's always going to be 49ers and Ravens. And I think that game works out very differently than the first go around. I think 49ers win it.
Yeah, I know the ball bounced a certain way that game. I think
Yeah.
my personal opinion is that, man, that was the best thing for the Niners at that time.
Oh
Right?
yeah. And
Like,
I think the one thing that surprised me about that game, and San Francisco had, I thought it was a possibility, but they had leaned into their passing attack a lot over the last few weeks of the regular season. Like, quietly, their pace had not changed, but they were a top 10 net neutral passing rate team. And for a Kyle Shanahan team, you were like, what? Really? Huh? But yes. And I think that, not to say that they're not going to throw if that rematch happens, but in that rematch, I think Shanahan learns his lesson, and I think they come out leaning on the ground game. And that's the one pressure point that last time they faced each other, we didn't see a ton of. Like, I expected it was going to be a massive CMC game. So that's where I think the math changes. And if we see that rematch happen, I think the 49ers are going to feed their ground game, feed Christian McCaffrey, and he's going to be the onus of how they win that game.
yeah, no, it'll be good if that's the matchup. I can't wait to see what happens in the AFC. There's just there's some great matchups ahead.
Well, you
So,
asked me mine. What's your Super Bowl
yeah,
prediction? I got to get yours.
yeah, I think the Niners are getting through. I would love the Lions too.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
I think that's the team that if they if they're hot in that game against the Niners, they could upset them.
Yeah.
But I expect the Niners to get through. It's so hard. I want Buffalo to get through, but Kansas City, playoff Kansas City, the way they showed up, is that how they're going to be playing the rest of the way? If they're playing like they did last week, I think Kansas City's going to get back and shock everybody, or yet not necessarily shock them. It wouldn't be a surprise, but at the same time, San Francisco's the team right now, probably. So I'd expect the Niners to win whoever they face, Baltimore or Kansas City. It could go either way. But I will say, I mean, I'm saying every team, but Buffalo also, just they've been so hot. So I think that Kansas City Buffalo game is going to be huge. Honestly, I think one of those teams is actually going to get past Baltimore. So I'll say that.
I like it. I like it.
That.
I like it.
I'll say that. Now projecting forward to next year, is there any players that you're just you will definitely jump ADP to grab, players that this year just impressed you so much, people you're excited to get on your rosters next year?
I think there's a 3 or 4 pack here of guys that I really love. I think for me, I've got Jaleel McLaughlin ranked incredibly aggressively. And when I say aggressively, like, I've got him as my RB24 right now. I freaking love him. And I know that there's so much certainty around Denver with quarterback, what's going to happen with the offense and things like that. But if you look at the backfield, it's like, what do we need to come to fruition? Okay, well, Javonte Williams really lost a step last year. Now, can he regain that step with a full offseason to really like work out, get himself back right, not just be rehabbing from an ACL? Possible, yeah. But did he also seem like lose some of the special sauce of tackle breaking that made him so freaking good? Possibly. And I just look at McLaughlin like it's wheels up, man. Like he's with a coach that does not care about size and using backs of smaller stature in high volume roles or high leverage roles. Plus, if you look at McLaughlin on a per touch basis, the dude was top 5 in damn near every efficiency metric that you could find. So love him. I'm going to be massively into Rashee Rice. I know that depending on what Kansas City does with their wide receiver room, like draft a guy, bring in a guy, I think that, we could see it's still an off season to be had for Rashee Rice, but I love what he did to close the season. Obviously, he's still continuing to ball in the playoffs, and we're just seeing a guy that's really ascending. And I made the comparison, and he got pretty damn close to doing it, man. But like rookie season, Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you look at him and Rashee Rice, what they did to close the season, those are not very different parallels. Like, you look at their stat lines, look at what they did, look at their target shares, and those are not crazy comparisons to make. And so could we see in this offseason, people are like, oh, but Kansas City brings in this person, or they draft this person in the second, third round, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, could that maybe shake his ADP? But could he still be the dude? Because people said the same thing about Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's like, well, he's a flash in the pan. Oh, I was used gadgety ways. Oh, blah, blah. You either have talent at a wide receiver position to demand and garner targets, or you don't. And that's a reflection of talent. So whatever you want to say about Rashee Rice, it's still a reflection of talent. And the other guy I'll bring up here is I'm going to have a really, right now I have in my early 2024 ranks, I have him ranked as the number 1 tight end. I will draft him as high as the second round in that same kind of Mark Andrews area. Trey McBride is going to be massively, massively drafted by me. Like, I'm going to he's going to be a second round pick, and I do not give a shit. Like, I'm going to draft him there. If it's not him, it's Sam Laporta. But I think like investing in this new wave of young tight ends is the way that we're all going to need to attack this. So it's like, are you fading Kelsey? You fading Andrews? Yeah, probably, because I'd much rather freaking draft Trey McBride or Sam Laporta, or take a shot on Tucker Kraft, depending on how that room shakes out, because these guys are really stinking good at football and they're on the way up. It's not that we're saying, oh, well, can Kelsey or Andrews stay at the top of the mountain? These guys are saying we belong at the top of this mountain. We have earned seats at the table, and these are their second or their rookie season and their second season. So they're just going to continue to get better, man.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, get one of those difference-making tight ends early on in 2024. That's the message. I love it. So what does your off-season look like? Senior Bowl and Combine and Draft. Like, are you doing any of those events at all?
Oh, yeah, baby. So we'll be there at Senior Bowl. This is my third year covering the Senior Bowl. Second year we've done it in a row with Fantasy Pros. We're going to have a big presence there. It's going to be me, Mike Mayer, Eric Froton, Thor Nystrom, all of us there in Mobile. We'll be there covering all the practices. We'll have write-ups. We'll have live shows. We're going to have podcasts. We're going to have all those types of things. So people need to be tapped in. I'm also working on my positional primers for the Senior Bowl. So every quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end that is going to be at the game, I'm watching at least. Now, some of these guys, it's harder to get a hold of film for, but assuming I can, I watch at least 5 to 7 games on every single player. I look at all their stats. I write them up. I'm already probably about 5 players deep right now and continue more. I got more guys to knock off the list today, but those will be live prior to us going to Senior Bowl, so people need to check that out. We will have obviously like all the stuff like covering the draft and the off season, all that type of stuff. Like, we'll have our live stream, all of our draft content, how you're going to bet the draft, things like that. So yeah, man, I mean, look, it's funny because I love the regular season. I crave the regular season. I love writing the primer. But damn, I love the off season. The more and more I've gotten deeper into doing content and stuff, I really think my favorite part of the football calendar has now become the NFL draft and doing prospect work. I think that is slowly taken on a life of its own for me and become one of the things that I absolutely just love. Like, I love watching games for players. I love trying to write up like what their skill sets are. How do they succeed? How do they win? How can their games grow? Things like that. Like, it's really become something where, like, I did it as a form of content. I liked it, but now I love it. I love doing it yearly.
That's awesome. So the truth is, there is no off season. Maybe a few weeks in June or July, I guess.
Just true. No off season, baby.
Yeah, I mean, growing up for me, the NFL draft was everything. So I totally understand how that could be so, just pull you in, because there's just so much excitement, so much projecting forward to the next season. So I hope you enjoy every second of it. I hope everyone, is following along the journey of this off season with you. What advice do you have for people that are looking to get more involved in the fantasy space?
I mean, it's a few different points, man. I mean, for me, it's, if you really want to make this a career, you're going to have to work your ass off. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to put in the time. I mean, no great thing has ever been just handed to somebody. You're probably going to have to work, and you're going to have to work double jobs, and you're going to have to work extra hours, and to really set yourself apart as far as content. And I think the best, if I'm giving advice to anybody about it at all, is I'm not saying, and everybody talks about like, well, their path maybe is not the same path for somebody else. But I think like, for me, if you're going to get into content and you really want to make a go at this, and you want to get to full time, or you want to get a job in this space and things, and this is really not only just content. This is if you want to become, you want to do other things like for a fantasy site as in a full-time capacity. It's how many skills can you add to the tool belt to make it to where if a brand or a company comes to you and says, "Hey, can you do this?" Whether that's a form of content, whether that's editing a show, whether that's producing graphics, whether that's all of those things, whether it's can you do redraft content, DFS, betting, dynasty, IDP, all these different things. I always wanted to make it to where if a brand asked me or a company asked me to do something, I would never tell them no. And for me, that's the way that if I was trying to get into the space even now, that's the way that you get in. Because if you're a Swiss Army knife, if you're the all-in-one package, if you can do all of these different things, and that goes to not only are you trying to get a forward-facing job in sports media, or are you trying to get a back-end job, or what are you trying to accomplish? Continue to add skills. If you add so many skills to the damn tool belt, you and a company, you cannot tell no to a company. How valuable does that make you? How much worth do you have, not only as a creator, what you bring to a brand, but also mortgaging that and leveraging that in the space and creating roles for yourself, So that's honestly how I would attack it, how I still attack it now. Like, I want to be, if I'm not like a leading authority of that space, I can still do that content. I can still talk about that. I can still actionably make something or analyze that, and no brand or company can come to me and ask me to do one of those things, and I'd have to tell them no. Like, I can edit audio. I can do certain things with graphics and videos and things like that. Like, am I at the level of other people? No, but those are still continue like skills that I'm trying to add still with myself, to where they ask the question, I'll never have to tell them no.
It's great advice. Powerful stuff. I love it. It's just so on point. It's great. Well, I was gonna ask you if there's anybody that you just want to shout out, or anybody that's kind of had a
Oh, yeah.
huge impact on you along the way. But you really, I mean, you've touched on so many impactful people during this podcast. I probably don't even need to ask, right?
I mean, obviously, like I said, it's shout out to Joey P, shout out to Tag, shout out to everybody at Fantasy Pros. I'll give one other shout out because I love this man like a brother. And if it wasn't for him giving me an opportunity way back when as a part-time contributor and continuing to add more and to push me, and not only from a trust factor, but you need a kick in the ass and I'm going to give it to you. I love Elliot Christ like a damn brother. Love that man. I can never say thank you enough to him for the opportunities, for everything. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I even got my first full-time gig in this industry. So love that dude. So somebody I have not brought up yet on this show. Yeah, he's got to be mentioned, man.
I love it. Yeah, great guy on so many counts.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to share before we close things out here?
Nah, I mean, look, 2023 was a wild season. 2024 is probably going to be. We always conclude seasons, Kev, with saying, "Man, I don't remember any season being as wild as this one, like injuries and stuff and players." And it's going to be just as wild in 2024, man. So buckle the hell up and let's go. I'm ready for it, man.
Expect chaos because it's
Yep.
coming. I love it. So where can listeners and viewers find your work, my friend?
Yeah, all my stuff is at fantasypros.com. Primer, all that kind of stuff. We're still continuing the primer for the rest of the playoffs. So with a DFS angle to it. I have more betting content coming out. I had a prop article last week. We'll be doing that again all the way through the playoffs and the main show. I mean, every podcast streaming services, and check us out on YouTube, man. I'm so proud of the work that we do on the video front and stuff like that. We got so many talented people from the top to the bottom, whether it's editing, whether it's putting these shows together, whether it's hosting. Again, shout out to Wells, shout out to Tara, who's another rising star in the industry, man.
I love it. Now, I look forward to the draft coverage and everything you're doing there. I love everything about what's ahead for Fantasy Pros and what's ahead for you. Best of luck in 2024, my friend, and I'll see you in Canton at the football.
Oh yeah, first round on me, baby. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.